Today, we delve into the epic saga of the strongest brave who craves for revenge, Extinguish with the power of darkness. So sit back, relax, and let the adventure unfold.
In a world perceived as cruel and unjust, a hero named Raul finds himself in a dire situation. Once celebrated for his heroic deeds, he now stands accused of treason, facing execution. The crowd, once his admirers, now hurl insults and accusations at him, their faces twisted with hatred. Raul, who once dreamt of using his power to bring happiness to all, is now bound and tortured, unable to move. The crowd is indifferent to his plight, their interest solely in witnessing his demise. His heart is a whirlpool of intense emotions and anger, despair, and sadness. Among the crowd, a woman's voice stands out. It belongs to Victoria, the princess of the Kurtz kingdom. Her beauty is undeniable, but beneath the surface lurks a monster. She is the architect of Raul's downfall, having fabricated the charges that led him and his companions to this path of death. Victoria, accompanied by Wendell, the great magician who betrayed Raul, stands before him. She taunts Raul, expressing delight at his predicament and wishing for his death to be entertaining. Wendell, sharing Victoria's sentiments, expresses his satisfaction at Raul's impending demise. Thus, the hero who once saved the kingdom now awaits his end, surrounded by the very people he fought for. Wendell, with a cold gaze, spat at Raul, thanking the princess. The crowd was thrilled, their cheers shaking the ground like a tsunami. Gradually, they began to chant for Raul's death. Stones thrown by the crowd hit Raul's head and face repeatedly, causing his nose to bleed. Victoria, with a perfect smile, revealed that everything up to this point was part of her plan. She called Raul her puppet and expressed her desire to eliminate him, the only obstacle left after the death of the Demon King. Raul felt sick, hating himself for trusting Victoria and for his own naivety. Raul's comrades, who had fought alongside him, were killed by beasts. His pregnant sister was brutally murdered. Victoria blamed Raul for their deaths, calling it a punishment for his sins and insolence, especially for rejecting her. Raul was filled with anger not just towards Victoria, but also towards the lustful priests, greedy merchants, and the great magician who twisted the truth. He saw them all as demons. He laughed bitterly, realizing that the only way to defeat evil was to become even more evil. Victoria, seeing Raul's madness, lost interest in him. She ordered her soldiers to leave Raul exposed while being crucified, instructing them not to kill him quickly. She wanted him to die slowly. As she left, she laughed loudly, followed by the others. Raul, left alone, was consumed by hatred. He wished for another chance to take revenge on everyone, to make them beg for death. Despite his situation, he couldn't help but laugh. His only thought was of killing everyone who had wronged him. In the midst of his pain, Raul cursed at the retreating figures. As day turned into night and then back into day, birds and insects, attracted by the smell of blood, began to feast on his flesh. Despite the unbearable pain and his body being consumed, Raul couldn't die easily due to the divine protection granted by the goddess. His heart was filled with an endless loop of hatred and a desire for revenge. As the days passed, Raul's body was gradually devoured until, on the fifth night, his heart was finally consumed and the pain ceased. His vision faded until all he could feel was the wind on his cheeks. His body felt lighter, and then there was only darkness. Raul Evans' miserable life had come to an end, or so it should have been. Suddenly, Raul found himself standing in a space surrounded by pale light. He was in a white world that seemed to stretch infinitely. His body, once severely injured, was now unscathed. His voice had returned, and he realized that he was back in the place he had been before he was reborn as Raul Evans. Suddenly, a soft figure embraced him from behind. Turning around, he saw a beautiful girl with light skin and a beautiful dress. Her face, a picture of transcendent beauty, was distorted with tears. This was the true goddess, the one who had ordered him to save the world as its savior. Raul laughed at himself, accepting the fact that he had returned to this place. The goddess, saddened, apologized for not being able to help him. She was affectionate towards Raul, touching him whenever she had the chance and calling him her beloved. But Raul, now different from his old self, felt no emotions for her or anyone else. He had learned that a woman's sweet words could be poisonous. Raul, filled with bitterness, pushed the goddess away from him and laughed. The goddess, still looking at him with love, fell hard. Raul accused her of being a foolish woman who only thought of love. He questioned whether the gods had wanted this outcome. The goddess, turning pale and trembling, denied it, insisting that no one could have imagined humans would kill their savior. Raul, however, was not convinced. He reminded the goddess of the atrocities committed by the humans she wished to save and told her not to forget the fate they had given their savior. The goddess agreed, admitting that her judgment was wrong and that she could no longer think of bringing salvation to humans. Raul then asked the goddess to lend him her power, the power she used to send him to that world. He wanted her to use that power again to resurrect him. The goddess hesitated, explaining that a dead soul couldn't return until it forgot everything and was purified. Raul dismissed her rules and insisted that she could do it. The goddess finally agreed, despite the risk of being revoked as a goddess. Raul felt no guilt in using the goddess. He was determined to use whatever and whoever he could for his revenge. He blamed the gods for everything that had happened and resented them all. He demanded the goddess to return his other power, the one she had sealed, which he believed was perfect for making them feel despair. The goddess, desperate, tried to persuade Raul to stay in paradise and enjoy eternal happiness. But Raul laughed at the idea. He believed that the world would be meaningless without agony, screaming, and despair. The only happiness he wanted was to see them suffer. He declared himself the savior and vowed to save the twisted world infested with demons. Raul, filled with anger, declared his intention to cleanse the world by killing everyone. The goddess, initially scared, seemed to change her attitude. She looked at Raul with heated eyes, seemingly excited by his dark intentions. Raul, finding her reaction absurd, laughed at her. Raul then asked the goddess to grant his wish, to resurrect him. The goddess, despite her hesitation, agreed. She hugged Raul and released his power through a deep kiss. Raul felt the power surge within him, stronger than any he had felt before. He realized that this was his true power as the savior. Raul then asked the goddess to revive him immediately. The goddess, heartbroken, agreed to send him back, wishing him her blessing. Raul found her blessing ironic, considering he was a murderer in her eyes. When Raul opened his eyes, he found himself standing on a small hill overlooking the capital. His execution wounds were fully healed, and he was dressed in simple clothes. He didn't have any weapons, but he was glad. He didn't want to use the armor and sword he had used as a hero again. Raul, eager to start his revenge, looked towards the beautiful capital. He considered his options, whether to corner them little by little or to take down everyone living in the capital at once. He decided to prepare first, activating his dark magic to increase his attack and defense power. As Raul approached the front gate of the royal capital, he noticed an unusually large number of soldiers guarding the gate. When a soldier ordered him to stop, Raul ignored him and kept moving forward, causing the soldiers to block his path with their spears. Ignoring the soldier's command to stop, Raul swung his fist lightly, causing the soldier's head to fly off. The sight of their comrade's headless body spewing blood terrified the other soldiers. Raul laughed at his own strength, which was greater than he had expected. The soldiers, upon seeing Raul, were shocked. They couldn't believe that Raul, who was supposed to have been executed a year ago, was standing before them. Despite their fear, they surrounded Raul, ready to draw their swords. Raul, unfazed, encouraged them to attack him. The soldiers hesitated, unsure whether Raul was an imposter or a ghost. They began to hurl insults at Raul, accusing him of being evil and boasting about how they had enjoyed the company of the women in his group. Raul, already aware of their actions from the princess's confession when he was in prison, closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. He was ready to face them, his heart filled with hatred and a desire for revenge. Raul, filled with negative emotions, was ready to unleash his power for the first time. He snapped his fingers lightly and countless ice pillars appeared, piercing through the soldiers one after another. The sight of the soldiers dying in such a gruesome manner brought a sense of satisfaction to Raul. The remaining soldiers were terrified, unable to comprehend the sight before them. They called Raul a monster, but he retorted that they were no different. They had admitted to their cruel actions against his companions. Raul then activated his magic again, creating more ice pillars from the ground. These pillars impaled the soldiers, causing them to scream in pain and fear. Raul reveled in their suffering, feeling a sense of accomplishment from his newfound power. One soldier who had spoken the most about Raul's companions was particularly terrified. Raul approached him, knocked him down, and pinned him to the ground with ice pillars. He then slowly pushed a particularly sharp ice pillar into the soldier, taking pleasure in his screams of pain. Raul, filled with rage, continued his brutal assault on the soldiers. He took pleasure in their pain, relishing the power he now wielded. One by one, the soldiers fell, their pleas for mercy falling on deaf ears. The last soldier, terrified and desperate, revealed that the increased security was due to a royal wedding parade scheduled for the following month. Raul, intrigued by this information, rewarded the soldier with a quick and painless death. Meanwhile, in Auerbach Castle in the Kingdom of Kurtz, Princess Victoria was preparing for her wedding parade. Her maids praised her beauty as she looked at her reflection in the mirror. However, Victoria's expression was somber. She was dissatisfied with her dress, a gift from her fiancé Emil, and took out her frustration on one of her maids, striking her with a whip. The other maids watched in fear, knowing the consequences of angering the princess. She demanded a new one. The maids, terrified of her wrath, hurried to fulfill her request. However, their fear was not just due to Victoria's temper. A horrifying incident had occurred a month ago, where all the soldiers guarding the castle town were brutally killed, leaving the ground soaked with their blood. The incident, believed to be the work of a monster, remained unsolved despite thorough investigations by the royal knights. This rumor had spread among the maids, adding to their fear. Sandra, the commander of the Kurtz Royal Knight Order, approached Victoria after she had removed her bloody dress. Sandra, who was deeply loyal and infatuated with Victoria, expressed her concerns about the upcoming parade. Given the recent massacre, she suggested postponing the parade until the culprit was captured. However, Victoria dismissed her concerns, showing no interest in the mysterious disease affecting the kingdom's leaders or the strange words they uttered before dying. She was determined to proceed with the parade, confident that there was nothing to fear now that the Demon King and hero were dead. Victoria, the princess, was not one to show fear, even in the face of danger. She saw her subjects, including Sandra, as her shields. Sandra was flattered by this trust, but it clouded her judgment. She would later regret not advising Victoria more strongly. When the cathedral bell rang at noon, it signaled the start of Victoria's wedding parade. The streets from the castle to the town square were filled with excited citizens. Victoria and her fiancé, an earl named Emile Clare, appeared on a carriage drawn by a white horse. The crowd cheered and threw flower petals as they passed. Victoria, used to compliments, felt particularly pleased seeing the large crowd from her elevated position. Emile, standing next to her, shared in the excitement. However, Victoria saw Emile as nothing more than an extra. Emile, the eldest son of Duke Auclair and a count himself, was a perfect match for Victoria in terms of social status and looks. But Victoria despised him for his disappointing character and his excessive dependence on his mother. Victoria's main reason for marrying Emile was her desire for a son. As a princess without the right to the throne, her only way to rule the kingdom was to give birth to a son, make him the king, and control him. Emile, who was not very bright, was a convenient tool for this purpose. Despite her distaste for Emile, Victoria couldn't help but think of the hero Raul, who had died a year ago.
That's it for today, folks. Stay tuned for the next part of our journey into the strongest brave who craves for revenge, extinguish with the power of darkness. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss it. See you in the next video.